Hello. Today we are going to continue with our understanding of integers, and I'd like to just clarify a little bit in regards to the notes that we took the last 2 days on our integer doodle note. So I'm going to just really go through just the rules for integers. And this is going to be on page 82 of your interactive notebook. It's the page right next to that doodle art that we put in. And you have a little mind map or graphic organizer that we're going to use. And we're just going to put this right in the center with 4 small pieces of tape, like so. And we are going to put in a topic for these notes, and the topic for this note is going to be integer rules. And get that a little bit bigger. And our essential question is going to be, how can we apply the integer rules? I'm actually going to say the integer operation rules. The rules for adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing with integers to evaluate an expression. Remember, an expression is a math statement that does not necessarily have an equal sign. And we can put it together to create later on an equation. So how can we apply the integer operation rules to evaluate an expression? And remember that integers are positive and negative numbers. And I want to put in there to clarify that they're not just positive and negative numbers. They are negative and positive whole numbers. They're not fractions or decimals. And they also include 0. Okay, so there's 4 main operations that we talk about with integers. There's adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing. And there's different types of problems that we have. Sometimes we have problems where the signs are the same, remembering that the signs are the positive or negative signs. Sometimes those signs are the same, sometimes they're different. And so there's different processes that we use depending upon that. So the first thing we're going to talk about is addition. In addition, if we have the same sign, meaning both are positive or both are negative, we're going to add and keep the sign. So add and keep the sign. So for example, if we have a positive 7 plus a positive 7, we end up with 14, and it's positive. If we have a negative 7 plus a negative 7, we're going to get negative 14, because 7 plus 7 is 14, and then it's a negative and a negative, so the answer is going to be a negative. Those ones are pretty straightforward. The next one is where it gets a little bit tricky, and that is when we have a different sign. When we have a different sign and it's an addition problem, we're going to go against what our brain normally tells us to do, and we're actually going to subtract, which seems strange, but bear with me. So what you're going to do is you're going to subtract the bigger number from the smaller number, ignoring whether they're positive or negative, okay? So once you've done that and you've subtracted, you're going to take the sign of the number with the greatest absolute value. And remember, absolute value is the hops from 0. So it doesn't matter if it's positive or negative, it's just the distance that it is from 0 and which one is the biggest. And you're going to take that as the sign. So for example, if I had negative 13 plus 35, well, the first thing I'm going to do is take the bigger number, which is 35, and subtract the smaller number, which is 13. Well, 13 from 35 is going to be 22. So now I have to decide, is my answer going to be a positive or a negative? Because the signs are different, so I don't know which one it's going to be. So then I look at these two numbers, and I decide, well, which one has the greatest absolute value? In this case, 35 is further from 0, so therefore it has the greatest absolute value, so my answer in that case is going to be positive. Now let's say I have negative 22 plus 2. Well, I take the bigger number, which is 22, I subtract the smaller, which is 2, and I get 20. Now I need to figure out, is my answer going to be a positive or negative? Well, looking at my absolute values, negative 22 is further from 0. Therefore, the negative has the greater absolute value, and my answer will be negative. Next, we're going to look at subtracting. In subtracting, you want to remember the phrase copy, change, opposite. And there should be 2 P's in there. Sorry. Spelling error. So you're going to do copy, change, opposite. And that's going to set up the problem. And then once you've done that, you're going to copy the first, change the operation, and the opposite sign of the second. So let's look at this. And once you've done this, then you're going to add like that. Okay, so let's look at a problem. If we have negative 65 minus 24, we have to first start off with copying the first number. So I just write it out. Change the operation, so from subtracting to addition, and then do the opposite sign. Well, this is a positive 24, so I want to do the opposite, which is going to be negative 24. Now I add, using the rules that I have right over here. So when I do this, I have a negative plus a negative, which tells me I'm going to just add it and then keep the same sign. So my answer ends up being I have a 9, because 4 plus 5 is 9, and then 2 plus 6 is 8. So my answer is going to be a negative 89, because it's a negative and a negative. Okay, so those are the rules for adding and subtracting. Don't forget, if the signs are the same in adding, you just add across and keep the sign. If you have different signs, a negative plus a positive, you subtract the bigger number from the smaller number from the bigger number, and you use the sign of the number that has the greatest absolute value. When subtracting, you use copy, change, opposite. You keep the first number, you change the operation, and you change the sign of the second one to the opposite. And then you just add using the adding rules. Now let's talk about multiplication and division. Multiplication and division have the same process. Okay? So I'm going to start off with if we have the same sign. And remember, It doesn't matter if we're multiplying or we're dividing. This would apply to both of them. So if we have the same sign, we're going to get a positive answer. It doesn't matter if it's the same both negative or the same both positive. The answer will always be negative. So for example, if you had -2 times -2, 2 times 2 is 4, and our answer is going to be a negative and negative, which makes a positive. Okay? You can also have the same thing if I were to have -24 divided by -8. Well, 8 goes into 24 3 times, and because it's a negative and a negative, my answer is a positive. Always. Now, sometimes though, you will get different signs. When you have different signs, your answer will always be negative. So let's look at some examples. -2 times +2. 2 times 2 is 4. And you have a positive and a negative, so my answer is going to be negative. Let's try another one. Let's do -12 divided by 2. 12 divided by 2, 6. I have a negative and a positive, so my answer is a negative. And those are the integer rules. So let's look at an example of this. If I had 24 plus 12, negative. And then let's do times, and we'll put in parentheses. It's going to be a challenging one. Let's do -2 minus 1. Look at that. That is a complicated problem. Well, let's remember our order of operations. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. The first thing we have to do is, in this situation, what is in the parentheses? So that's here. So I've got -2 minus a 1. Well, using my rules, I'm going to copy the first, change the operation, and do the opposite here. So now I have in my parentheses -3. I'm going to have times -12 plus 24. So now the next thing I need to do, I don't have any exponents, but I do have a multiplication problem. -12 times -3. Well, I know that 12 times 3 is 36. And this is a negative, and this is a negative. So now I have 24 plus positive 36, because a negative times a negative is a positive. So now I have this problem. I just have to add 36 plus 24. Well, 6 plus 4 is 10. Carry my 1. 3 plus 2 plus 1 is 6. My answer would be 60. Remember, if you need to go back, these notes will be available on Haiku or the YouTube channel. You're always welcome to go back and view them again. I hope you have a great day. Talk to you soon. Bye.